everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're starting a new show! Oh my god! A new show after a year of Berserk is insane to me. I'm Romania Black, if you're new to the channel, and I have been reacting to anime and manga and Donmai for 4 years now, nearly 5 years, and so for the last year on Saturdays, I've been looking at, a little tiny series called Berserk, and I've been looking at the 97 anime as well as the manga. It has been a laborious journey, filled with a roller coaster of emotions. You can see those reactions on the channel, but as such, with such a monumental series, I was like, well, something has to replace it, now that I'm caught up. And so I did a poll over on Patreon. We had a lot of nominations. We narrowed those nominations down to 8, and the poll was insane. It was a close bottleneck race up until the last, literally, minutes of the poll. But the top 2 series were Dororo, which is the one that won, and Land of the Lustrous. Now, if you are a fan of Land of the Lustrous, do not fear. I have possible plans for that series. Definitely go to my channel and go to the November channel update video and watch that, because I'll be talking about it there, and you can kind of voice your opinion of where it should go and all that fun stuff. But Dororo won by 1 vote. Y'all spoke. And I'm going to adhere to the winning show. And so here we are. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. As per most of the shows on my channel, I know nothing going in. I like going in 100% blind, and I like being a sleuth and a detective and working my way through it and figuring out what's happening and trying to piece together the characters and the story and the symbolism and all that fun stuff. I'm an English teacher. I'm a speech teacher. I'm a coach. I do other things during I'm like Sailor Moon, like, teaching school by daylight, reacting to shows by midnight. Like, that's my thing. So I come at shows from the perspective of someone that's an English major, someone that loves literature, that loves storytelling, and somebody that's super excited to watch anime and manga and just geek out and fangirl about it, as you may know from watching my channel. So I'm super excited to dive into this. As far as where you can find Dororo, it is on Amazon Prime, so I luckily have a subscription. I don't have ad-free because what? So I'm going to be editing this down below. In the description is a link to the actual reaction. It'll be reacted to down below, and then up here in the main video is going to be the discussion. So I like to react to shows and then afterwards do a discussion and a breakdown of what's happened per episode. If you are new to the channel, please know that I do like reading comments. I love hearing what you all have to say about the shows, but, and this is a big but, Sir Mix-a-Lot size but, I don't like spoilers. So I will be avoiding spoilers, and I will hopefully have a moderator being able to check the comments each week before I respond. And if you just get a heart or a thanks for the comment, that means I didn't read it because there could be a spoiler there. So just be aware of that, because I want to find out from the show as we go. Luckily, it's only 24 episodes, so it's not going to be a crazy journey, but I'm sure it'll be a fun one. The only thing I know about Dororo is, as I was looking it up to put it on the poll, I know that it is based off of a 4-volume, I'm pretty sure, 4-volume manga from the 1970s, and there was a 70s or 80s anime that was originally Dororo, and then this is the 2019, which is fairly recent, 2019 adaptation. So, which is fine. I am watching it in the subs. I am assuming it's Japanese, but I'm watching it in the sub. So there we go. I'm super excited for this series. I've had Dororo recommended for a long time now. It just never won a poll, so here we are. But I'm excited to see what it's about and to see what this first episode has in store for us. So real quick, I just want to thank you all on Patreon. Thank you so much. If you are on YouTube, I'm very thankful for people that subscribe, that like and leave a comment. That's awesome. But I'm also very thankful for my Patreon, because I don't get money off of YouTube. That's a whole other bracket thing. So Patreon is the source of funds that I have for the channel. And so people that support me through $1 or $5. Y'all are amazing. But I have a philanthropy tier of people that support me $10 a month, and y'all are awesome. So I want to give a special shout out to these individuals that help support me and go the extra length. They get a shout out in my videos each week. So I want to give a shout out to Alex Cornejo, Anime Annie, Be Happy, Bryant Reed, BBT, as well as Dana, Danger Zone, Destiny Marie, Danny Donmai, Devorin, Damage3245, as well as Eric, Ichu, Fisho, Ghostly Turnip, Elfreya, Liam Poles, as well as Lyndon, Matthew Palfinier, Murphew, Maroney W, Nicholas, Nameless Monster, Sunspots, Shimoyama, Trails, Translucent Men, and Alexandra Q. Thank you so much, everyone, for all of your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. All right. So, I'm excited. I don't know what to expect. Like I said, I'll probably edit out if there are any ads down below, but I hope you all are on board for seeing what this show gives us. Should be a fun time. I'm seeing in the openings frame a pair of engines, which makes me think of Vinland Saga, so I'm excited about that. But we're going to get started with Dororo, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's see what all we get, shall we? I'm already down for this story. And we're 1 episode in, but man, I have a feeling these 24 episodes are going to go by very quickly, which is good and bad. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this first episode. This is Whiteboard Kun. If you've never met Whiteboard Kun before, Whiteboard Kun is my dry erase teacher board that is the explainer of all things, and he assists me when needed. And I have lots of theories about what's going down in this show. Obviously, if you are watching, please don't correct me in the comments. Don't be like, no, it's actually this. I love finding out as the story tells us, so don't worry. I'm going to be watching the series. If I'm wrong, I'll be wrong, and the story will correct me, and I'll be pleasantly surprised. So yeah, you can be like, oh, what interesting theories you have, sips tea, and then that'll be fine. That'll be great, right? So hopefully you enjoy my wonderful theories. They're probably all going to be wrong, but we'll find out as we go. I didn't watch the OP for this first episode because, we got introduced to Dororo and the first son by the time that the episode was over. So next week I'll watch the intro, so don't worry about that. I'll be able to see it. And the ED was super cute. The ED reminded me a lot of Vinland Saga's EDs. So if you've not watched that series, I have reacted to seasons 1 and 2 on this channel, so you should go check it out. But yeah, so let's talk about this series. A nice historical fantasy. I'm all about it. We don't know exactly where this takes place at. It seems like a fantasy world, but it seems rooted in Eastern Asian history, so we'll just go with that. But we get to meet Daigo, who is, I've put some people up here. We got Daigo and his wife, the second son. We don't know how many children they had. We know they at least had another son. And then the other son is very unfortunate in that he took after the father. And we'll talk about that in the looks department, but he seems like a nice kid, right? And then we have the first son, which we'll bring down here. And then we have Dororo, the blind badass man with the sword in the mandolin. And I'm like, yes, please. And then the prosthetics man that I'm sure knows the first son. I'm sure he knows him very well. So we'll go through this, right? So can we just all agree that women giving birth is such an ordeal to begin with. I don't have children. I personally don't have the desire to have birth because there's lots of things that can go wrong with it. And I'm just like, no, thank you. I would much rather adopt a child than I think have my own, but that's a whole nother discussion. But I will say the process of having babies, I don't think any of y'all men understand. And so I was like, oh my God. And the worst part is, like, for before the 1900s, women didn't have anesthetics. They didn't have like epidurals. They didn't have drugs. I'm sure they could take drugs. I'm not sure if it would be helpful depending on what it was. But ladies, having a baby in ancient times, I know some women do natural births now. My one friend had like a hot tub time machine baby, but I'm like, bless you. That's a emotional. My friend that I coach with, she has 4 children, and she had 2 with epidurals and 2 without. And her first child, she did not have an epidural. And she's like, it's fine. You feel like you're dying for 10 minutes, but then it's fine. I'm like, okay. But yeah, so I feel for her. She's so pretty, and we're going to talk about her in this. But I love the contrast of her looking to the Buddha, looking for divine guidance from God and from divine spirits to help her have this baby and for it to all go well. And then prior, we had her husband basically sell his soul to the devil. And it's like, oh, it's a great like heaven and hell little compare and contrast there, if you will. But yeah, so we have that going on. So we back up to where we see that everything is going awry in this world. You can kind of see some landslides and some mudslides that have happened as Daigo goes up to the temple to see the Hall of Hell, which aptly named. But we see like there's been a landslide. He talks about there's been famines. We've talked about in this episode that there's been wars. So things in the kingdom are not prosperous at all. And he's the lord of the kingdom. So he goes up there. I do love just the framing of this, of walking up all the stairs. There's the temple that's there with everything going past it. We see him walk past, like, obviously the temple's like a sanctuary. So we see him walk past. What's interesting is he walks past the temple and there's some like vagrants that are outside of it. And then there's like a little shack. We focus on the shack for a hot second, but not very much. And then we cut to the Hall of Hell, which is up the stairs. I'm going to be curious. I'm going to make some predictions. I'm going to be curious if that little shack that we focused on for a little teeny weeny bit is going to be relevant later on when we come back to this, if that's going to be important. But we go to the Hall of Hell, which of course, I wonder if the shack that looks run down, a lot like the temple, is supposed to signify the divine and signify mercy and sanctuary. But then the Hall of Hell, which is literally filled with demons, is all pristine and proper and pretty. And it's like, it's, you know, Lucifer was a very handsome person, but also the devil. So yeah, so the Hall of Hell. He walks in, there's these stone dragons above it, and there's a man sitting there that's supposedly guarding it. And I'm assuming he's the priest that maybe is also in charge of the temple down below. If you've watched Jujutsu Kaisen, which I'm anime only, so please no manga spoilers, but the outfit that the priest is wearing in the Hall of Hell when Sir Daigo goes to meet him, it's the same outfit that Geto wears, and that's all I'll say. I instantly was like, Geto, is that you? But so we have the priest here. One who steps into this Hall of Hell has made a choice. So did he make a choice as well, the priest? We don't know. To cast off Buddha and the gods in favor of demons. And he's like, it's futile to try to stop you. And Daigo's looking around as if, I wonder if he's expecting someone to ambush him. But he's like, I want you to hear me out this last time. And he tries to tell him, he's like, to cast off Buddha is to tread the path of evil. It is to no longer be human. If you cross that line, hell will surely await you. And so then he tries to tell him, like, you know, and he's like, well, we're already living in hell. The holy path to Buddha you pray for exists nowhere. Which is such a common theme, right? In narratives where characters feel, they believe that they are pushed to the brink. And he says, I don't care about the consequences. So what's interesting is the priest goes and grabs the candle like he's going to run somewhere when he gets struck. I don't know what he was running towards. I don't know why he was grabbing the candle and running away. There are also 2 candles there. So I don't know if grabbing one, I'm going to be very curious why he grabbed one of the candles and the other one was left. So I don't know if there's going to be any cultural or symbolic significance of him grabbing the one candle and leaving the other. I don't know. I don't know what that means, but I'm assuming we'll find out eventually. And so, yeah, then he kills the priest and slices him up in front of all the demons. And then there we go. And so he's like, this will be my salvation. Just this world is indeed hell, as you said. The prayers I offered seemed more and more pointless. And he's like, he basically was like, I was beginning to fear that I was going to doubt Buddha, but you've kept that from happening by killing me now. I'm glad I'm going to die before I completely lose my faith. And so he's like, stay away from the demons. Ooh, don't let yourself succumb to evil. What's interesting is that he's like, well, it's too late for that. I was like, oh my God. So then, like, the candle's flickering. So I don't know. Again, so there's 12 demons, which we put down here, right? There's also a candle. He scoots the priest out of the way that he's murdered. There's still a candle there. The one candle goes out, and then the other candle goes out after he makes the deal. So again, I don't know what the significance of the two candles are going to be. I'm assuming later on we'll find out probably, but for now that's interesting. I don't know what to make of that. But so Daigo Kagamitsu is his name, Kagamitsu. And so he says there, he's the Lord of Ishikawa, the vassal to the governor of the Kaga province. And so he says that there have been famines and epidemics sweeping over the land. Everybody's dying. There's war. He's like, everybody's to the point of death. But then he says, as things stand, I will never attain the power and renown that I crave. So here's the thing. What's interesting about Daigo's character is that his country is plagued with famine and epidemics. And what's, a sign of his character in this moment is that he doesn't pray to the demons. What I thought he was going to say was, hey, my people are dying. Buddha, God ain't answering my prayers, so I'm going to turn to you instead. Can you help cure the famines and the plagues that are affecting my people? But that's not really what he asks for. Instead, he's like, I want power and renown, and I can't do that if there's a bunch of sickly people around. And I was like, wait, what? So he's basically saying that because of that, he's not able to get his fame and prosperity and legacy. Because he's like, I don't want to be king of a bunch of poor people. And I'm like, what? He's like, I want to be king of a bunch of a wealthy kingdom. And I want integrity and I want pride and all this. And it's like, oh, so you don't actually care about the people of the city. You just don't want to be king of a dump. You want to be king of a fancy place. So we don't necessarily want this place to get cleaned up to help the people. We want this place to cleaned up to help you. And it's like, oh, that's a huge difference. And one thing that's so interesting about his character is that, normally when you have an antagonist that is like so full of ego, like this one statement makes him, he's, usually those villains are over the top, or they're kind of like, they have like a big burst of anger, or they're, constantly like, he is an asshole. He's an asshole to his wife later, which we'll talk about. But, they're constantly portrayed as like this over the top super machismo, or like violent, roaring anger and villainy, like oozing out of them. He's not like that. He's pretty calm and cold and collected, but what he says that embodies his thoughts makes you go, oh, never mind. You seem like you're stoic and kind of chill, but you actually are pretty terrifying. And so then he's like, this is not going to work. So he's like, my ambitions will remain a mere dream, but I refuse to rely on the mercy of Buddha or the gods. He's like, I'm tired of being patient. What I'm about to say is not a prayer, but a deal. He's like, I'm going to make a deal with you. Yep. If you'll protect my land and let me rule my country, then I'll give you anything of mine. And they're like, anything you say? Take whatever you wish. They're like, anything you say? What? So the deal was that in exchange, that to rule the kingdom and get prosperity, they would take anything of his. Okay. And there are 12 demons. It reminded me a lot of Mulan, where there are 12, there's, the ancestors that are in the temple and the shrine. And here you have, I'm assuming 12 demon statues that are in the shrine as well, which is interesting to me. So I was trying to say, I want to go back and see what they all looked like, right? To see if there's anything, because we saw the two dragons at the beginning. We saw the two dragons, and then we see another like a monster. It looks like a kelpie or a horse. And then there's one with two swords. There's one with like a ribbon. There's another one that looks more draconian. There's one that looks like a fish. There's one with a huge set of jaws. Yeah, so we don't get to see what they all look like, but we'll go back to that thought at the very end of the episode. So the other candle blows out, and then lightning strikes inside the temple, and he gets the scar, right? And he gets the scar that's the X over his head, like it's like the mark of the beast, right? The mark of the devil. And that's around the time that at first I thought that he, like, the way that the episode is framed, I thought he was leaving during her labor to go make a deal with the devil. And I'm like, dude, if stories have taught us anything, maybe don't make deals with the devils until after your wife's had the baby. But we don't know how early this was before he made that deal. And so instead, she asks for protection, and there's a baby born. But as the baby is born, and they're like, oh, your son, here he is. At that moment, that's when lightning strikes him, and the demons come to take his son away. To strip his heir away. So everybody runs out, and he goes in there. We have his symbol there on the back of his kimono, which is going to come in. Look, here's the thing. This woman, the mom, showing unconditional love to this baby is one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking things. Because if you are a mom, or you know someone, because I'm sure some people, if they're not, familiar with knowing women that have had kids in the past, they might be like, how could she, look down at that baby and be all like, was she delusional or anything? And it's like, no, she wasn't delusional. She's like, I had this baby. I just gave birth to it. Spent hours laboring over this child. He's moving. He's alive. And of course he's like, oh, you've done well. You made me an heir. Thank God it's got a penis, And then when he pulls back, that's when he sees. It felt very much like Claude Frollo in Hunchback of Notre Dame, where he pulls back the sheet and he's like, a monster. Like, that's what it looks like. It was very much Quasimodo in that moment where he pulls back and they're like, we don't know what happened. A bolt of lightning came in here. It's almost as if you made a deal with the devil, Your Majesty, and they came to collect. But yeah, they're like, he's alive, but he has no limbs, eyes, or a nose. Yeah. So let's write that down. So the son, no limbs. So that includes 2 arms, 2 legs. He's just a little stump. His stump. Getting Scum Villain Self-Saving System vibes. He's a stump, a human stick, if you will. He's got 2 arms, 2 legs, no eyes, which there are 2 eyes, so none of those. No nose. None of that. So, God, he's missing those things. He doesn't have any skin either. And they're like, I'll give you anything of mine, whatever you wish. So the demons took from him. And so, no skin. I think that they said he didn't have ears either. So, ear. How many is that? I have a theory. 4, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have a theory of mine about what we've got. So then there's sight and sound. So, okay. And I guess smell would go with that too. But 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll just put the eyes together because I have an idea about what to do with this. My theory is, as we go through this, maybe a tongue, because could he talk? We don't know. He cried though, so he has his vocal cords. So here was my theory before we get any further, because I was trying to see if the math added out to this. My theory is that each of the 12 demons took a part of him. Took a part of the baby as part of the deal. They each grabbed something from the baby and took off with it, right? So my theory is that as the son defeats each of the demons, each of the 12 demons, as he defeats each of them, he gains a part of himself back. that's my theory. But then we're gonna put back on. I'm gonna put down here. So you have 2 arms, you have 2 legs that were taken, his eyes, which we'll put 2 for now, his nose, his skin, 2 ears, so it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, and then I would say it's almost like I'm thinking of Harry Potter and the Horcruxes, that if you destroy each of the Horcruxes, the one that created it gets less powerful, but I don't know if it's going to be something similar to that. But my theory is that as he gains each of these back, so he has his ears, we'll put the ears and eyes together. So we'll put the ears as one thing, the eyes as one thing. Each of the legs can be an own thing. So he has his arms, his legs. So 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, smell, 11, and then his, I don't know if we'll put soul on there because I don't know. I'm curious. I'm going to be curious. And what's interesting about the son is that we don't get him talking in this episode, and we don't get a very big read on how he feels or his emotional state. So it'll be curious to see if he gets if we treat the arms and legs as one thing, or if they're each separate, and if the eyes and the ears and the skin and the nose are its own thing, and if the senses are on their own thing. Like, just because he has his eyes back, can he see? Can he smell? Can he taste? Can he talk? And then I feel like defeating the dad would be the final thing, but will he do it or not? I don't know. I'm going to be curious to see if that's what we get out of this series with this, the 12 demons. If he defeats a demon, he gets part of his body back. Because it kind of almost feels like a Pinocchio scenario where he feels kind of like Pinocchio, where he's not a real boy. And then we have literally a prosthetics man that's like Geppetto. And then we go from there, and maybe the blind man's like Jiminy Cricket. That'll guide him, or has guided and trained him to use, to fight without being able to see, because that's what he could do. So I'll be very curious as we go through this to see how much of this theory maps out and how it gets complicated and proven wrong, etc. But I feel so bad because the woman, it's her baby. She's like, I love him. I feel a deep love for this woeful child of ours. She's like, this is my baby. I love him. I gave birth to him. And, what I was going to say is that any woman that's given birth to a child, no matter what they look like, or if they're stillborn or anything like that, they still love that child. And she's, sitting over here being like, hey, I love him. So no matter what his appearance is, he's our son. And clearly he takes after her, but he just starts laughing about it, thinking like, oh, my deal with the devil worked. She's like, my dream's going to be, he doesn't give a shit about his kid. He's just like, oh, the deal actually worked. So now we're going to have a great kingdom and I'm going to be a great ruler. So, and she's like, what? And he's like, oh, the demons agreed to the deal. And she's like, you made a deal with the devil and sacrificed our kid? Excuse me? And he's like, oh, don't worry. And he gives her baby. He's like, thank you for having this kid. You allowed us to have this kingdom, whatever. The thing that killed me is she's like, stop. And he's like, oh, well, forget he ever existed. And I'm like, that shows in that one line how little he knows. Because it's like, forget the kid you gave birth to ever existed. Like, she just labored over having that kid. You have no freaking idea what she just went through. And that's like so heartless. And then when she's sitting there, they're like, oh, you shouldn't give up. And she's like, please. He's like, well, he wouldn't survive anyway. And when she says, let him pass away in my arms, I'm like, that is all she's asking for. Is like, if her kid isn't going to live, she's like, well, then let me hold him until he dies. Like, any mother would want that right. But to show how out of touch with reality and horribly out of tune this man is and inconsiderate he is, he's like, no. And then he shoves her down. She just gave birth to his kid. She like, okay, so she tears off the sleeve, and that's what they use to wrap him up in, right? And then he's like, oh, well, you'll have to bear me another kid. Like, she just, in the span of 10 minutes, birthed a child, and you're like already thinking about, well, you have to have me another one. I have to have an heir. He's like, well, the next one will be the heir of a great ruler. And I'm like, ugh. And that's when he sees that the Buddha statue has been decapitated. That it sacrificed itself. She kept the statue, though. And she kept it later on. But what's so insane to me is that, oh, thank God she had another kid and it was a boy, because imagine if it had been a girl, heaven forbid that. But I felt so bad for her. Like, she just wanted her kid and to be with her son, and he just took it away like it was a toy, like it was nothing. I'm like, what an asshole. And anyway, so episode 1 is called The Story of DAIGO. And so we get the midwife. And so we also have the established idea that there are soldiers who have been killed and possessed by demons. It gave a very like Modao Zushi vibe. If you've ever seen that Danmai Modao Zushi, it's giving like, this feels like a donghua. I don't know if it's an anime or donghua. It feels a little bit like a donghua sometimes, but that's not a bad thing. And they're like, what could have caused this? And so they're like, well, either way, being alive would only be harder for you. So the demon possesses a suit of armor, right? Now, do I think this is one of the 12 demons that gets killed? I don't know. So she puts the baby down into the water to drown it, and it starts literally crying blood. I think what is important about this scene is that the woman, she kind of symbolizes how instead of taking care of the baby, instead of saving the baby, instead of doing the right thing and not just casting him aside, she doesn't want to have blood on her hands of drowning the baby. And she says, I should be used to this by now. Like she's been midwife to other rulers who had daughters or kids they didn't want, and she had to go out and kill them, take old Yeller out back and drown him in the river. But she can't make herself do it. But she doesn't want the responsibility of taking care of him. So instead of getting her hands dirty, she instead decides to do the passive-aggressive thing and be like, well, I don't want to be a literal murderer, but second degree is okay. So she's like, I'll just put him in the boat, even though it's a baby that hasn't even nursed, can't do anything, and I'll just call it a day. And it's like, And then as soon as she leaves, that's when the demon eats her, right? So as soon as that happens, which is interesting, she like wraps him up with the insignia and everything. So there's this thing with the smoke. I'm assuming that's the demonic like miasma that rises up, right? And she like lets him go, and that's when the demon attacks her. They're like, the rest is up to your luck, dear boy. Apparently he has the devil's luck. Just saying. So yeah, this like spirit, this praying mantis like spirit eats her. And they spare no expense. They like literally show him like gnawing on an arm. And that's when we see the blind musician pull from the handle of his guitar a sword. I know it has a name that's not a guitar, but it's not escaping me right now. And I love that he's blind. He can sense like the evil aura, which is what the boy can do later on. So the fact that he can sense the demon's aura the same way as this man, I feel like they showed us this man early on with what he could do, so that when we see the boy do the same technique, I'm like, maybe he learned from the old man. I don't know. We'll see, but I love it. He's like, you're not a human. He says the boy is not a human, but he's not a ghoul either. He's a curse. So he's like in this limbo. He's not human because of what the devils have done, but he's not a ghoul either. There's like a little bit of green in there. So it's like there's a little bit of green miasma going in there. So it's like it's something divine about him. Again, if you've watched Berserk and read Berserk, this reminds me of a character in that series. But we're not going to go into details about that. Yeah, not a ghoul either. Just a curse. I love that he slowly like shuts the handle of his guitar. He goes along his way, but we don't get to see what he does, but I'm like, did he go after the baby? So who knows? So DAIGO lands at the border of Kaga, and after overcoming many famines, it was on its way to prosperity. But the tiny soul, too weak to even let out a cry, quietly vanished off into obscurity. And there was none in the land who knew about it. Yeah, the midwife was the one that was sent after him, so We don't know. I mean, I'm assuming the people that were around when she gave birth were like, where'd the baby go? And they're like, oh, it died. So, but they don't know what happened to it. Not even, as far as DAIGO knows, the baby's dead. He doesn't even know his son's still alive. So then we have, we go back. I wanted to see if they talked about like where this story right here is taking place, because they say 16 years later, right? We jump to 16 years later, and they say there's always being a war fought somewhere. Human lives were hardly worth more than stones on the ground. And we see like all like the men praying over the corpses and everything, and has the staff, which is what we close in on. So then we have the prosthetic man. He's putting in prosthetics on the bodies so that he can give them a proper burial. To me, I feel like he probably stumbled across the baby and decided to give him prosthetics to give him a proper burial, but the kid ended up living. I'm so curious as to what we're going to find out, but we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, they ask if he's the doctor that gives prosthetics to the dead to mourn them, and his name is Jukai. So Jukai, and he's like, well, what's it to you? But I'm like, he has all the parts and pieces there that are literally with the boy. And he's like, I figure it'd be better than throwing away the prototypes. Interesting. So then we have our mysterious figure, who they name him at the very end of the episode, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, he has like, I love the sound effect that as he's walking, you can hear it sounds wooden. His feet sound prosthetic. They don't sound real. And he's like a little doll. And even the little kid recognizes him as a little doll, which is interesting. So then we have Dororo. Dororo is so cute. I'm surprised. I thought Dororo would be the name of the first son, but no, it's of this little thief, this little Aladdin, Berserk Isidro prototype thief. Although I really like Dororo. Dororo is super adorable, super cute, very relatable. They're just a little humble thief trying to survive in the real world, and these assholes will just, which granted, he did steal their stuff, but I'm like, this kid's like 7. Like, if you guys let him steal your stuff, then it's kind of your fault, you know? But the one masked guy, he saves the kid from falling into the embankment and said that he looked like he was wearing a mask. These guys get horse shit thrown on them, which is great. But then, the moment they introduced a puppy, I was like, oh, no. The moment we saw this little random puppy walking up, I was like, oh, no pound puppies here, because they've already shown us an elderly woman getting gobbled up by a demon, a baby getting its skin, limbs, and eyeballs and sensory organs removed. I'm like, now you hold on a hot second. I don't like where this is headed with this dog, because anytime that you've shown all these atrocities and suddenly there's an animal there, I'm like, if you hurt the animal, we're going to have trouble. Right? Which is what they do. That one guy, he looked like he was about to throw it apart. Now, the kid makes the statement to the dog that seems like a mantra for how he's lived his life. He's like, you have to learn how to live on your own. You got to learn some street smarts. And if you keep begging for scraps, you're not going to get anywhere in life. So it seems like he projects the lessons that Dororo has learned onto the dog, or tries to, because he's a kid and that's what he does. But then the dog gets picked up by these brutes who are just beating the shit out of him. It's awful. I was like, leave the kid alone. So then that's when our masked man shows up, looking like it's so funny. I was recently in October watching, I like watching Red Letter Media. They're probably one of the only reactors I really watch, and they are kind of reactors, but they do a lot of B movies and stuff. I love watching them because they do a lot of like production elements and like how things are made, and they have experience with it, which is fun. But they recently did a review of a series of movies that my brother loved as a kid. My brother loves and has loved the Puppet Master series. I've only seen the third one because I watched it with him once. It's fine. It's B-movie schlock. It's good. My brother loves them. But whenever I saw him and his arms detach and they're swords, he has sword arms, like instant Edward Scissorhands to the next level, all I could think about in that moment was, I'm like, oh my God, this is like Puppet Master. Which he kind of looks like a puppet, honestly, from all the prosthetic things. And that kind of lends to the Pinocchio and the Geppetto metaphors. But it's funny that he's not even paying attention to the humans. he's paying attention to the demons. And it almost feels like maybe he's drawn to the demons. Maybe he's drawn to them. And it's his goal to like stand. Maybe we don't know what he knows and what he's been told and what his upbringing the last 16 years has been like. We don't know that yet. But we could assume that maybe he's learned about the demons and that he needs to destroy them. And maybe destroying the demons is the only way to get back his like sense of self. Regardless, I love the scene where the demon that eats the 3 guys and comes after the kid, he looked like from Spirited Away. He looked exactly in Spirited Away like the god that comes into the bathhouse and he's covered in mud from the dump where the lake is. Love it. So yeah, he's got like all these different robes on. He's got this patchwork stitched together. The scarf, I wonder if the scarf's made from the cloth that he was swaddled up in. I don't know if his hair is real or not. I don't know if it's a wig or if it's real hair. I don't know. But regardless, he goes through, gets his sword, picks up the sword with he goes Zorro style, picks up the sword with his mouth after he uses his arms like little chopsticks, which would be really hard, right? He gets like a scyther on it and then goes up to the kid and the kid gives him his arms back. What I love is that Dororo does not judge him at all. He's like, that was amazing. And he just gives him his arms back. Like, he doesn't judge him. He doesn't view him as a monster or as a weirdo. He's just like, oh, awesome. Kind of showcasing how these kids, don't have necessarily prejudice. It's built into them rather than born into them. So yeah, so he gives him his arms and puts them back on. Glad he puts them on the right way. And then he takes out the sword and he's like, oh, everything's fake on you, right? And so he reaches over and like waves at him and he's like, well, you can see, but you can't hear, can you? Because he claps and he's like, well, I wouldn't be able to walk a step with my eyes closed. I like that he makes a joke out of it. He's like, but you can run and jump without using a cane. And how did you do that? So then he like looks up at the sky. So I wanted to see like what was happening in this. So he looks up at the sky, but then something happens and he like starts to shake and the mask falls off of him. Like the mask that was literally like attached to his face, which is kind of gross. And then as he falls down, okay, so his nose is there. He has a nose. We see the eyes. Maybe he doesn't have his sight back, but we all of a sudden see like the face grow back, like it's part of him. And he's like, what's going on? What's with your skin? So there's this lightning strike. And then we see DAIGO, who's grown much older in the last 16 years. And so there's a storm and everything. And then lightning strikes the temple. And he goes over there to see what's happening. And he walks into the temple. I like that he goes back to the same place, into the Hall of Hell. And when he goes in to see what's going on and looks forward, that's when we see that there's been a cut right through one of the statues. So again, I'm like, did every time he kills a demon, does he gain part of himself back? And that's how this goes? And he's like, well, that can't be. And then there's another landslide. Interesting. So we go back to the house. And then we see their kid, the second kid. And he's like, I got a turtle dove for you. It'll make you strong. So clearly she's not in the best of health. But then we see, who's the kid? He says, Tahoe Maru, we'll cook it for you. So Tahoe Maru is the second son. All right. Tahoe Maru, unfortunately, looks like his dad. He has like the eyebrows, the wispy hair, everything. He looks like his father to a T. He seems like a sweet kid, though. And she's like, oh, how wonderful. I mean, he seems like a sweet kid. He doesn't seem like a spoiled brat, which is a good thing. And she looks very pretty and seems, makes me think that he was a lot older when he married her. But she definitely seems melancholy about her first son. She's like, it rained like this day too. Mm-hmm. And she thinks about her dear son. And honestly, I think, anybody you've talked to that knows someone or has been someone that's lost a child, they can tell you that they think about that kid every day. Even if they have other children, that child that they lost never leaves their mind. So even though she has a healthy son now, Tahomaru, who seems like a really sweet kid, she still does think of her son. And, how could she not love him? She never had closure with him. She never got closure with the kid that was taken away from her and shoved, like, he was like, bye, like, we're gonna dump this kid out. She never had proper closure with it. So how could she not think that? So then there's the battlefield and these pile of corpses and everything. And the doctor, who is doing the prosthetics, he's about to put a mask over him. Then he looks there, okay. And there's, oh my God, that one man's face is like blown apart. Like you probably can't see his face. And he puts the mask over and it says Hyakimaru. And then we cut back to him. So I'm guessing that's his name because the prosthetic man seems to know the first son, whose name is Hyakimaru. Tahomaru and Hyakimaru. What a thing. And so then he's like, oh, your face. And he's like, what is going on? And he's like, what are you? Are you human? But it's like his face grows and he blinks. Right? Like it's part of his face now. What? Can he speak? Can he not speak? I don't know how to do. I don't want to look up what names mean because I'm afraid that I will get into spoilers. Anything if I look up, it's going to be spoilery, and I don't want to do that. So, to avoid spoilers, I'm not going to look up anything, but I am super curious to know what Tahomaru and Hyakimaru mean. So, maybe we just look up, like, Japanese name meanings, and we'll just look them up together, and that way we won't be surprised necessarily. So I'm gonna look up what does Maru mean, because Maru is Japanese. It's a more feminine. It could be masculine or feminine. There we go. What does it say it means? It means child or beauty. Maru itself, its variation on the word world, co-child. It means round. Okay, well, Maru is a female name that means round. It can mean fruit or flower. Interesting. Okay. So then Taro in Japanese is a masculine name that means strong. Of course it does. So being like a strong flower or a strong sun. And then Hyaki. What does Hyaki mean? Let's see. Hyaki name meaning. 100 demons. Oh, that's fine. 100 demons. Okay. And Taro means the first. Oh, in Japanese it means firstborn son or big boy. Wow. Or eldest son. Well, he's not the eldest son. He's clearly not. That name is like completely a lie. Like making him feel like he's not the firstborn child. Oh my God. That's just setting Taromaru up as a character in this series to have his like world shatter when he realizes that he did have an older brother that his dad conveniently did not decide to, oh my God, mention. So Maru does mean circle or round. Okay. Well, that kind of makes sense with Hyakimaru because, he was like a little round body with no limbs. And there's like all these demons around him. So that makes sense. That makes sense, actually. No, that fits. Interesting. I'm in. I'm so intrigued by Hyakimaru. I want to know more about how he lived, about who took him in, because he couldn't have just floated on for 16 years and then became a great sword fighter. There has to be a backstory. So I want to know that. I want to know if meeting Dororo and the encounter with him triggered all of this transformation happening, or if he was already in the process of the transformation. The prosthetics man, the doctor, seems to know Hyakumaru, so I want to know their relationship. I want to know more about the blind man, and I want to know how this is all going to tie back to Daigo, who made a deal with the devil. So this is going to be a fun ride, and I'm excited to share it with you all. So I'm excited to hear your comments down below, but I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'm back very soon with episode 2 of Dororo. Bye!